Hey everyone. Wanted to go over a couple of things that I think you'll find useful and interesting. Uh, we're going to import some data from a web page into Excel. Uh, I know some people will try to copy and paste. You can do that. Takes some patience and doesn't always give you the results that you want. Um, Importing has a lot of advantages. Um, you also may want to know why. Um, You may want to import a price list from one of your vendors, um, so you can incorporate it into a quote or something. Um, you may play the stock market, and grabbing that data and having it readily available is kind of a handy thing to do as well. You might just want to import, a stack of contact lists from a web page. Um, any of these things are quite useful. Um, what we're going to do is we're going to make a report. We'll make a report and set it up and get it prepared to send to somebody and password protect it for safety's sake. So we're going to go ahead and open up a report that I've got set up on one of the servers here that pulls parts from our service system. It's all the parts that we used for over a year for a construction company. So basically, I would like to make a report out of this. There's a good bit of data there, so I definitely don't want to type it, and copying isn't going to work for me. So we'll make sure we've got Excel open here and go back to our report here and copy the data that's here in the address bar. So we do a copy. Now we go into Excel, and in Excel you have your row of menu items at the top here, and the one we're going to mess with is data because we're getting data. So we go to the data tab, and we're going to be pulling data from the web. Now, technically, we're not on the internet getting this data. This data is on our local server here, but it just as easily can come from, as you saw, some other web pages. But anytime that you're pulling data from an HTTP page, it's considered web from Excel. So we'll click on that, and it opens up this little baby Internet Explorer tab here. You can stretch it out if you want to be able to see it a little bit better. And up here in the address bar, you're going to paste the data that we just pulled out of the web page. So that's where we want to go, is that address right there. So click go and give it a second, and there's our page. Shows up in this little browser. You can come up here and just hard type stuff in. If you know the address and you just want to type it in, you can do that. But it's just as easy to go to the web page, make sure you're where you want to be, copy and paste it. Now, these arrows over here are how you select what you want to import. Well, we just want the table of data. We don't want all the extraneous stuff on the rest of the web page. So we go find our table that has the little arrow. You click on that little arrow, it makes it a green check mark. So that's what we're going to import. Now, if there was multiple tables, you could do that as well. You can click on the multiple tables and pick them all. But we're just picking this table and we're going to import that in. So we'll click the import button down here at the bottom of our little window. Next thing that pops up asks us where do we want to put it. Now the default is what we have here, which is the cell A1 in our current open sheet. You can click anywhere else and it will go there as well. But no, we want it to go there. A1 is fine. So we'll just say OK and give it a second, and boom, it imports our data. That's the bulk of what there is to that because our data is in there. Now it's just Excel data. So we can do anything we want to with it. Nifty thing that you'll find is when you do an import, it recognizes things. It knows that that is a date, so it imports it and sets it as a date. These are just numbers, but it creates currency out of it. So you can do math to it. It's not a if you hard type that in, sometimes it'll consider it text, but it knows that it's a number, but it shows it to you as currency. Um, Sometimes it has a little bit of trouble, like our part numbers here. Our part numbers have alphanumeric characters in them, uh, but some of them are just numbers. So it's not sure what that is. So it puts it in as a number, thinking, well, maybe it's a quantity or something. So basically, all you have to do to tidy that up is select the entire row. You click on the header, and that selects the entire row. We can right click on it and format this data. We'll format our cells. And what that gives us the ability to change what is recognized about the cells that we've got highlighted. You can do a lot of things. If it was numbers, you can make it currency, tell it what it is, or if it's a number, you can tell how many uh, uh, decimal places to use. But we just want it to be text because that's what it is. It's a part number, but it's text. It's all text, and we want them to all be treated the same way. So we just select text, and so anything that's in those cells will be just that. So we say okay, and if you notice, it lined everything up pretty for us because now it says, okay, I don't know, it's a number, but it's where it's also text. So that's all we're worried about. At this point, our data is just that. It's good data. So we're going to go back to our home uh, menu here because this is what's going to do the rest of the stuff that we need to do at this point. Because we're going to make this a little bit better looking report. It's also a report. So first thing I want to do is total up this column. So when I total this column, I go down to the bottom here where I want to put my total. And I want my total to be right there. So I could sit there and I could select it all and all do this kind of stuff. Or I can click my little fancy auto sum button here, which is a magical little button. You click that, and what it does is it selects the entire column and it puts the formula here for the sum of that column. I hit enter and I have just that. I have the sum of that entire column there, which is exactly what I want. So all I have to do at this point now is to type the word total to indicate what that number is, which if you haven't figured it out yet, then you do need some help. We'll hit bold, make it a little brighter. Go ahead and throw a highlight on it. Hit the little bucket here. The bucket gives you all kinds of colors. We're going to fill it with yellow so it highlights it. We're kind of proud of that number. Now we go up to the top. It's still not too impressive. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight, by clicking on the number here, we're going to highlight the whole top row and make them bold. I'd kind of like to line them up a little bit better too. So we're going to go here to the alignment. That's what these are, your alignment tabs. We're going to say center. That puts everything in the middle. That's a lot better. And that's kind of pretty neat. Interesting thing that you'll notice about the columns, you can adjust them manually. Bring them in. If you got a lot of white space, you can bring them in to where you're comfortable with. They look good for you. May stretch them out a little bit. This one, I want it to be centered. So if I highlight the whole column and click our little center button again, I have to click it a second time because I've already had that set up. But now it's centered our equipment numbers. And it looks pretty decent. One thing that will find at times is say I want that to be the word quantity instead of just type that in. Trouble is that's bigger than my column. Well, that's no good. Well, one thing that you can always do is you can double click right here alongside the top of the column, and it will auto adjust that accordingly. And if you didn't catch that, we're going to put this back to QTY because that looks kind of silly like that. Okay. And if you just rest your mouse up here between the two columns, double click, it brings it back to the basic size of the data, and it fits it to the data in the column. Okay, kind of like the look of that. That looks pretty good. Now I do want to throw another row in here. So if I click and highlight this top row, and once again, I right click at this point. Anytime you right click, always brings up your context sensitive menus, gives you items that you can do. It's a faster way than going through the menus sometimes. We're going to insert. We inserted a row. And that's a row. It's got more of the columns. So I can put more data in there, but I don't want to put data in there. What I want to do is I want to highlight that like that and click this little button, which gives me my merge and center. That merged all those cells together, made one big giant cell, and centered the text that goes in it. So now, and I can start typing. You never type right when people are watching you. Okay, that don't stand out very much, so let's just highlight that. And I want it to stand out. I want to just do a visual on it. So you've got these little buttons up here. You've got your increase font size and you got your decrease font size. Well, we want to make it bigger, so we just click this A. That's bigger. It's bigger yet. Keep clicking. If you notice it's adjusting the font size, you could manually adjust that number if you wanted, but I'm doing it by eyeball here, so I want it to look, that's about the size I want it there. So we're going with a 20. 20 is a good size. I'll go ahead and throw a bold on that, make it really stand out and pop. Okay, so that's what we've got. Now we can go ahead and set this up to print if we wanted to print a copy of it. We go in here and hit print, and we're going to say print it to that one. And but I don't like is it didn't fit all my stuff on my sheet. A couple of ways you could go about it. You could do a landscape report, which I'm not big on landscape because it ends up using more paper, and so I want to do a scaling. So if I click scaling here, I can say I want to fit all my columns on one page. Now, I don't want to fit all my rows because it's a big long report because you'd never be able to read it. But I want to fit all my columns on one page. If I click on that, you notice it now all fits on all the data fits on there. So it's just page, 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 and that'd be a good thing. Next, I want to make it a little bit easier to read. So we click on the page setup. Now we already got our portrait landscape thing set up, and we don't need to do any more scaling because it did that all by itself. If the report was off center, you can always do a alignment, click center horizontally, but we don't need to do that. Header footer, I'm going to put a footer on it saying that this is page 1 of however many. That's always handy when you got these large reports because you need to kind of know where you're at in this report. And then something else I always do with a large spreadsheet is I click show grid lines. That will give you those nifty little lines that's easier to follow than trying to go down the thing with a ruler. And that looks pretty good. I like that. So I could go ahead and hit print, but I'm not gonna. We're going to go ahead at this point and do something else. We want to password protect this because I want to send it to somebody, and it's not really data that's I think should be public knowledge. So I want to go to my information tab, and this gives me the ability to protect my workbook. If I click on protect, I have several things I can do here. I can just protect it from edits. I can do a lot of things. What I want to do is I want to encrypt it with a password. That way, if you don't got the password, you don't see my data. That's kind of how I feel about it. So we click on this and type in our secret password. Okay, and now we got to type it in again. And if you type it in right, it says, hey, it's password protected. Now you see that's highlighted, so that means there's something going on. You read it, yep, it's password protected now. If you typed it in wrong the second time, then you get the error message saying you didn't type it in right. So always and remember your password. If you forget your password, you have just locked yourself out of your spreadsheet. The last and final thing we need to do is save this thing. So we're going to hit save, and we're going to hit it on our desktop. It gives you a name. We're not going to call it that. We're going to call it report. And always make sure it's got the extension on it. You don't want to delete that. Hit save, and it's saved. Okay, so now we'll hop out of that thing and minimize this. And there's our report. So let's see. If we double click on it, hey, I can't view it because it wants a password. Well, that's a good thing. So we type in our password, and boom, there's our data. Now, something I didn't explain to you earlier, the reason it has enable content is because this content is content from the web page, so it can be refreshed. So I'm going to enable it right now because I created this thing. Now, you all know the cautions about enabling content. Never do that unless you know every fact about a spreadsheet. But what I want to show you is the data here. If you right click, you have the ability now to refresh. You also, if you go to the data tab, you have the refresh all button. But you also have a connections button. Interesting thing about this connections button. This shows you any connections like this one that we've made. This is a connection to a web page. Let's click on the properties. I tell you here where that data came from. And the reason I'm showing you this is if you go in here, it's told to enable refresh in the background. That means when you click the refresh button, it does the stuff in the background, doesn't get all up in your face about it. Something you can have it do is you can checkbox here and have it refresh on a repeated basis. So every 60 minutes or every 5 minutes or whatever, whenever you think that data needs to be refreshed, according to what page you're pulling it from. Or you can click here and have it refresh when you open the file. That's the most common because you don't want it changing data while you're working on the thing, I don't think. Generally, you just want the freshest data as of the moment that you're working with your spreadsheet. So if you checkbox this, that will automatically refresh that data when you open that spreadsheet, and that is about the extent of what you would want to go to with this specific report. If you have any questions, you let me know, and we'll go from there. Thank you.